titled Successes and Opportunities in Modeling and Simulation for FDA. If you'd like to access a copy, you can scan the QR code right there. We're all familiar with in vivo testing, animal or clinical testing, which is often an important part of what you do to get your device cleared with FDA. Interestingly enough, at the trade show we're at here in Dusseldorf, Germany, Medica, along with our friends from the MEDC, the word on the street today is just how disappointed people are with the MDR, the new medical device regulation in Europe. Part of the reason that it's so daunting is because clinical data or in vivo data is required for all medical device applications, raising a very, very high bar. FDA, on the other hand, is actually pressing in the other direction, asking, well, if in vivo data is necessary, so be it. But of course, in vitro data is required, benchtop data is required. But they're now starting to ask the question more and more, when can modeling, they call it in silico, be used? Computational modeling to be able to identify whether something's going to work or not. They've thought about this in a few different areas: pre-market product review, post-market product assessment, policy development, or policy implementation. And they've done this analysis. But I want to show you one table. This table is absolutely fascinating. And it's a little hard to see here, but if you go to the QR code we just showed you, you'll be able to access it and a lot of case studies from the agency. This is showing places where the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Center for Devices and Radiological Health, and more are using modeling in their processes for pre-market, post-market, policy development, and policy implementation. And what you'll find is that different divisions are using them in very different ways. Now, some things that won't come as a surprise, for example, that CDRH is using modeling to study solid mechanics, fluid dynamics, heat transfer, acoustics, optics, ionizing radiation, mass transport. These sorts of things are what you would expect modeling to be used for. You would expect to see them as part of a 510K or a de novo, and they're a common part of the process. But if we look at something like this, benefit risk assessment, we'll find that some divisions use it for that and most don't. So for example, CBER, as shown over here, does use modeling for benefit risk assessment, but none of the other divisions to date have started adopting that. So it's quite a smorgasbord of who accepts modeling and for what. Now, of course, on the device side, the goal, the desire is to be able to use modeling more and more. And as the FDA says, initiatives are underway to fully harness computational modeling throughout the total device product lifecycle. And this is an example of that on the screen here. You'd like to use modeling over here during prototyping for design optimization. You'd like to use it over here during the regulatory decision. But they say this, quote, to realize these efforts, the credibility of computer model predictions must be established. Yet open questions remain. How much validation? How good is good enough? The lack of guidance for answering these questions has prohibited broader adoption of modeling and simulation in medical products. Now, we've experienced this firsthand in our own company going to FDA. FDA says, we want to see some modeling and simulation. Great, you bring something to them. And the next question is, how well is this model validated? And when you explain to the agency that there's no good way to validate the model, well, they don't ask for it anymore. But there is this interest, and yet validation continues to be the hurdle. To that end, FDA actually worked with ASME, the standards organization, and in 2018, after about a 7-year process, ASME published the V&V 40 standard, which you can get to through that link, which talks about how to validate computational models in this domain. So it's a really fascinating area. It's fraught with setbacks. One doesn't presume that you can just get a model and have FDA accept it. But it's worth knowing that the agency is interested. They're always interested to hear about models that you may have. In fact, that can be the subject of things like informational meetings with the agency. It's always good to reach out to them and let them know if you think there's something cool like that that can be done.